Leaders, welcome back to the classroom. I am so excited to be back. Now, depending on how well you keep up with these lessons, it may have been a while since you've seen me, and I would love to tell you that it's because I've been busy, and it is the truth, but let's dig into that for a minute. I try my hardest to ensure that I put out the best quality product that I can. So when I get busy in other areas of my life that I lead in, quality can get sacrificed. So what I had to decide way back when things started is I wouldn't let my ego get the better of me and try to have something to say every day. So the first decision was made quickly, that these would be weekly at best. And then I also had to decide through a couple failures in quality that when I hadn't done my research or didn't have enough time to prepare effective material, I would either have one of my trusted friends take the helm, or maybe if they were too busy, we'd just have nothing for that week. Now listen, as my pastor, Jason Sides, loves to say, especially when he's talking about a spirit of excellence, doing nothing is always better than doing something poorly. So my severe decrease in free time actually brings me to the point of this lesson. There have been several points in the last month, really in the last year, where what I really could have used was someone to anticipate my needs and just plain take some stuff off my plate. So I guess depending on where you are in life, you're either feeling my pain or wondering where this is going. For those feeling my pain, let's put a pin in that for a second, because I really want to help those that we came here to build up. You see, there does exist a project, a process, a heavy lifting task that your leader is too wrapped up in to just come and put in your lap. But if he could just free himself up from that task, he could work on the next project, process, or heavy lifting. You see, there are more than one. Leaders don't whine, they just do. They're so used to a no-fail mentality that sometimes you almost have to pry the task out of their hands. But I can tell you this with absolute honesty, I can think of 5 things I've worked on in the past few months I could have let someone else handle for me. And listen, it wasn't a lack of trust in the abilities of others that drove me to try and handle things on my own. It was 2 things. The first being my fault is that deep dive into my work that I suspect drives many of you who are watching now. And the second is, well, picture this. I go around on a pretty frequent basis and I want to make sure that my people are okay, that they have everything they need. And I ask them, is there anything that I can do for them? But conversely, I can count the number of times on one hand that someone that I'm privileged enough to lead comes to me and says, hey, sir, is there anything I can take off of your plate? Now, the many things that John C. Maxwell has taught, one that has stuck with me over time is the title of this lesson. What can I take off of my leader's plate? Now, for me, in between making sure that I don't squeeze the last drop of life out of my own folks, I also make sure my boss isn't being squeezed. That's important for a few reasons. For starters, if I can get tunnel vision, so can my leader. And the organization needs a leader with vision to succeed. We talked about that before. If the boss has too many things on his desk that are marked urgent, then everything's a priority. And that means he can't see clearly. And that means he can't start doing triage because he needs to focus on what's in front of him, which is everything. And that's where I come in. And coincidentally, that's where you come in for your leader. Why? Well, there's that proverb that says, where there's no vision, no revelation, the people cast off restraint. So follow me here. Pretty soon you have followers who've gone too long without hearing from the leader. They begin to make their own rules and adaptations to the system, and we normalize deviations. Okay, that's a topic for a whole other lesson right there. And the order that was established to keep things in place, those management controls that were designed to handle the day-to-day operations, that order deteriorates. Or, for fun, we could try to be in tune with our leaders enough to spot the signs of stress. And even though you may not be in that inner circle, at least have a relationship that's solid enough to knock on the door and say, is there something I can help you with? Even better, and this one will throw your leader for a loop, how about after you wrap up that meeting with him and you realize that you've delegated the nuts and bolts of what's on your plate, ask what's on their plate and volunteer to run with the ball on something. Now, you all know David is my all-time favorite character in the Bible for at least a million reasons, not the least of which was that he saw his leader had a few things on his plate and volunteered to take one of the big rocks. Now, he could have easily offered to pick up King Saul's dry cleaning or maybe tutor Jonathan in archery. All those things I'm sure would have helped, but he took one of the boss's biggest problems that he was facing at the moment. Now, that second reason I check in to make sure my boss isn't being squeezed is that it gives me a chance to see where his priorities are. My leader has a leader, and that means that on a long enough timeline, priorities can and will be shifted to align with the next higher echelon in our organization. Now, listen to me, leaders. If you don't know your leader's priorities, shame on you. And if you do, but you've just chosen to ignore them, just go ahead and resign. But once you have an understanding of what your leader's priorities are, and you've developed your abilities to be useful to that end, you can confidently approach your leader with a can-do attitude about getting things done. That's what I've needed for the past few weeks. To be honest, that's what your leader will inevitably need. And I have to tell you, it will not always be asked for. You'll have to look for it. Now, few ground rules before you go don your cape this week and try to save the world. Let's look at David again, because we can base those rules on his particular actions. So first, it may be a good idea to verify that the things you're supposed to be working on are already under control. Before David even approached the king, he left his sheep in good hands. Second, you want to be sure that you have the skill set for the task that you're undertaking. There's nothing like finding out your boss needs a database built from scratch and you've barely mastered PowerPoint. David knew that he had the skills. You'll notice in the story that he recalls his previous victories over seemingly impossible odds. Lastly, find out what the impact is of the work that you'll be performing so you can find some inspiration for yourself and anybody else that you're going to involve on the project. Now, David, he just comes right out and asks the question, what will be done for the man who defeats the giant? And he gets some inspiration in that. So this week, leaders, lighten the load of your leader. Now, not at the expense of your subordinates and not to kiss up. Do it because it will show two things. First, that you're not too focused on your own area to see that your leader has a full plate. And second, that you just may be ready for that next level. Trust me, there is a problem that you can solve for your leader that will change the way they perceive you. And just like Saul showed appreciation to David for solving his problem, there is a reward for the leader who lightens the load of his leader. Listen, I had a great time hanging out with you all today. It is great to be back. I'll see you all next time as we continue to dive deep into our leadership.